Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I want to welcome you all. And also, I want to welcome a very special guest. And indeed, the presence of this guest has put me in very bright spirits indeed. This is, if you don't know already, the one, the only, the Fanatical Dragon. The Fanatical Dragon. Or the Fanatical Dragon, or TFD. This is what we spoke about a little bit just before we started recording, by the way. But I am so honored to be joined by the Fanatical Dragon, a wonderful presence on YouTube, on physical media releases, discussions about Asian cinema and various releases across many a platform, many a label about this topic, and indeed other topics in the wonderful world of cinema. So without further ado, let me please, won't you join me in welcoming the Fanatical Dragon? Johnny, my dear friend, how are you?
Thank you very much. I'm good. I should say Ohio, because it's the morning for you.
Ohio gozaimasu. Thank you very much. And it's kind of late evening for you as well, right? Or late night for you?
Late-ish, but 11 o'clock here in Bonnie, Scotland. Yes.
Oh, Scotland. I haven't visited in such a long time, but I had the opportunity to visit twice or so in my life. What a lovely place. Lovely place indeed. How is the weather right now where you are?
Cold. Extremely cold.
Cold?
I think it's about minus 5, minus 4, minus 5 just now. Pretty chilly.
But is that what's the phrase? Is that par for the course? Is that something that is one is used to, I suppose, or?
Yeah, about normal for this sort of time of year, but no snow. Sometimes we get snow this time of year, but at the moment it's just been wet and cold and very windy. But that's okay. It's just a good time to stay indoors and watch lots of movies. Basically, it's the best way to spend winter.
Spoken like a true film enthusiast indeed, and so thank you. And indeed, that's a good place to begin, because I know your channel very well, the Fanatical Dragon. We have spoken a number of times offline as well, but perhaps just as a place to start, again, for those who have not yet had the great benefit of maybe knowing you, and maybe for people who are meeting you for the first time, would you mind just providing an introduction about yourself and maybe your channel? So please let us know, again, for those who might be meeting you for the first time, my dear friend.
Sure. I'm Johnny, or the Fanatical Dragon, or just Dragon, to those that watch the channel quite a lot. The channel's been running for, I think, kind of about 2 and a bit years now. I'm on my second incarnation, because as I'm sure you remember yourself, my first channel got obliterated by YouTube due to rookie mistakes on my part. So my current channel is my sort of second attempt at doing a channel, which ended up being quite a good thing. It meant I was able to sort of streamline a little bit between the two channels and drop some of the stuff that because I used to cover little bits of computer games as well when I first started off. Didn't really know, I knew I wanted to have a channel, but it took me a little while to work out exactly what should be on that channel. And I knew it was definitely going to be film based, but over the first maybe 5 or 6 months, it kind of ended up evolving quite naturally into just being quite East Asian cinema focused. Not really by design, more just that I can't afford to collect everything. I certainly don't have the space or the resources to buy everything that I would like to. So I tend to just focus largely on East Asian cinema, bits and pieces of some anime stuff. But for the most part, just try to get the things that are a bit harder to find online, so harder to stream. So the films that are less easy for me to get my hands on, or things that I have loved kind of going way back to when I was a pretty small kid. So yeah, the channels for the most part is fairly East Asian cinema focused, but not exclusively. Occasionally I'll cover the odd American release, just pretty much whatever takes my fancy. I kind of try and keep it quite loose and quite open. Yeah, it's been good fun. And then a mixture of reviews, some unboxings. I try and do kind of upcoming title information occasionally, so try and let people know what's coming out where in different parts of the world, and just try and keep it as being a place where it can be a mini community, so other like-minded people can kind of come and stop by in the comments, as it absolutely happens on your channel too. But then also just a chance for me to kind of really flex my creativity in a way. But the only type of filmmaking that I currently do is my YouTube channel. There was a time when I did music videos and short films and all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, my YouTube channel is now just a way for me to kind of flex a little bit of creativity and have good fun and meet incredibly nice, wonderful people like yourself, who some have channels, some don't. But yeah, it's nice to be a part of this little YouTube film community.
Oh, wonderful. And the channel is, once again, for those who are meeting you for the first time, The Fanatical Dragon.
Yes, no
Right.
spaces.
No spaces. The Fanatical
No.
Dragon. It's a cool name. I love it. The Fanatical
Thank you.
Dragon. TFD Dragon. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
So all the information will be in the description box of this video below. I encourage everyone who loves cinema, who loves physical media, who loves East Asian cinema, who loves cinema in general, and just for the joy of it, just for the joy of watching these films, who people who enjoy this, go to the Fanatical Dragon channel. You can go right now, pause this video, go right now to the channel, open up another window on your laptop or whatever the case may be, and just go there and then subscribe and notification bell. Go to some of the videos, the comments, and the like, and you'll see, as I have many a time, you'll see all of the great catalog and archived videos and things that you have done. Even in this, as you say, there has been a lot of how shall I say, a lot of say maybe what's the phrase, up version 1.0 and then now version 2.0, I guess, in a manner of speaking. But that's great. That's great, because now it's still alive and well, and really it's fantastic. You see all the focus on, as I mentioned, certain titles from 88 Films or Eureka, Arrow Videos. I mean, if you're talking about the premiere work on the Arrow Shaw Brothers sets, volumes 1 and 2, you've got to go right to Fanatical Dragon. You've got I saw that great video you did, for example, on what was it, that magazine.
I should mention at that point that the part of the reason why I do the magazine, because every time there's a new Eastern Heroes, I'll do a full sort of magazine preview. So I'll break down each issue. That's because I write the Blu-ray section for the magazine. So anytime that anyone picks up the magazine, there's a little bit that I get to kind of write in print, which is very much a labor of love. I think none of the contributors for that magazine, nobody gets paid. So it's very much just people doing things for the love of those movies and for the love of kind of coming together. So it's nice to reminds me of when I was young, before internet time, when the only way we could really find out information about anything was really magazines and books, and so I like having an actual kind of paper publication that I can kind of go through every so often. It's really nice to be a part of it. So yeah, every time there's one of those issues, I do a Blu-ray section. Sometimes very specific. If it's a special issue about Bruce Lee or about Jackie Chan, then my section would be correspondingly kind of focusing on that exclusively. But otherwise, it's kind of new arrivals and new releases for that kind of period when the magazine comes out. It'd be good fun to do.
So so while we're on that topic, do you remember what you wrote for instance, that particular issue of the Way of the Dragon coverage?
No. Dude, I've done so many in the last little while. I think I actually do.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. I apologize.
It's totally fine. I think I'm slightly joking. I do sort of remember. I think for that specific issue, it was all the different versions of Way of the Dragon that had come out, either as standalone, so going back to some of the old DVD versions, and basically kind of which is the best version of the movie that people could find. And unsurprisingly, it's currently the Criterion one. We'll see if that's still the same answer if we do this chat again later this year, because I think there's meant to be 4K versions of all the Bruce Lee movies coming out later on this year. We shall see. But yeah, for the time being, that Way of the Dragon special was just all Way of the Dragon. I think it did the same because he did a special for Game of Death and The Big Boss and Fist of Fury. There's been a lot of Bruce Lee specials. I think the magazine for those that maybe don't know, Eastern Heroes was a magazine that's been around for maybe, I think, almost three decades now, three almost four, maybe even 4 decades. Ricky started it in the 80s, around the time that the Jackie Chan fan club started in the UK, and the magazine started at the same sort of time. Really is largely a glorified fanzine at the beginning, but then got more and more popular, and then they ended up having a shop in London and their own video label. So a lot of the VHS releases of some of the films we're seeing from Eureka and from Arrow were originally put out by Eastern Heroes in the UK. So I
Wow.
think they've been around for a long time. So you'll see Rick on a few of these. Rick Baker is the editor of the magazine. He's the man behind it. So you'll see Rick on a few Blu-rays. He's on some special features and stuff, but he's been um, very, very passionate about this type of cinema, and particularly about trying to make it more popular in the UK since I was a very small boy. So it's kind of nice to get a chance to work alongside one of my sort of childhood heroes now. He's a very nice guy.
That's
Good fun.
fantastic.
Someone else would be good for you to get on at some point too, because Rick's kind of like an energizer bunny. You kind of wind him up and let him go. If you get Rick on, you'll be hard pushed to get a word in edgeways, but he will speak for 3 hours and it'll all be wonderful. But he's a great guy and a good magazine. So.
Oh, that's so wonderful. You know, you're absolutely right to bring this. I mean, there are so many types of these fanzines. I don't know if fanzine was the phrase that was used like back in the day in the 80s. I guess it was just that was just the only thing that was around, right? And so we
Mm-hmm.
are maybe similar in age, or maybe a
Mm-hmm.
similar same generation. I was also a VHS kid in the
Yeah.
80s, so
Because
but
I'm sure you probably remember that coming up, because I certainly remember a time before when there was no VHSs. I mean, I remember the days before video rental shops kind of being a thing. I can remember when the sort of the VHS format was introduced. So before then, it was very slim pickings. You only had what was on the TV at that particular time, and we hardly had any channels. I think at that point there was maybe three, but I think it was maybe even still two at that point. It took quite a while for us to get a few more channels over here, and movies were generally only shown at very small specific periods, so Sunday afternoons, kind of maybe sort of Friday, Saturday nights, but they were pretty few and far between. So I think once this sort of format came along that let you choose the movie you want to watch whenever you wanted to watch it, as opposed to whatever was being screened on the TV that night, it was a pretty wonderful thing. So yeah, my real education in cinema, I guess, started when we got our first VHS player and our first video rental card.
I love that. I love how you mentioned that your education experience through the VCR. I love that. So let's go on this. So what were some of those titles that you remember
I think
that really
my
struck you?
first, I mean, I think because Hong Kong martial arts cinema came in pretty early. I think probably
Okay.
because of Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee weirdly I think was almost like it was very familiar when he came around. I think I gravitated to it so quickly because it reminded me of James Bond. Like Enter the Dragon was the first one that I saw, and Enter the Dragon feels a lot in some ways like a sort of Bond film structure. And James Bond was huge for us growing up. I mean, Sean Connery comes from the same city that I do, so he's very much a sort of local national hero for us when we were kids. We didn't have that much to be proud of from coming from Edinburgh. I think Glasgow's kind of the cooler city, so Glasgow was the one with all the cooler bands and a little bit more life to it. Edinburgh can sometimes be a little bit dull by comparison, but our one true hero that we could be proud of was always Sean Connery. So yeah, James Bond was a huge thing for me growing up. My dad was a massive, massive Sean Connery fan, and so a lot of my earliest sort of film memories are of kind of watching Sean Connery, James Bond movies with him, really, when they were on TV, being under the impression that most of them were black and white for years, because we only had a black and white TV. So it took me ages to realize that they were all color features. Because I think maybe the first half dozen times I saw those movies, it was just in black and white. So it was quite a revelation, maybe in my early teens, seeing those movies again when we were now up and running with a color TV, and then actually seeing them in color for the first time. But so yeah, James Bond and Bruce Lee were probably my earliest two, and then my dad's always had a love of Kurosawa as well. So he's the one who kind of introduced me to that type of cinema as well. So that took me a lot longer to start appreciating. I think first few times I tried to watch Seven Samurai, I didn't make it to the end. It's a pretty long film for a sort of 8-year-old kid, so I think
Yeah.
that took a little bit longer for me to kind of appreciate. But it definitely started, I think, with my dad gave me my love for cinema, and my mum probably gave me my love of music, and that's what they were most into. And as a kid, you sort of want to gravitate to being around your parents, and by osmosis, you end up sort of liking a little bit of what they like. So that's probably how I got sucked into it. But then went way overboard. But as soon as I had the means to start consuming films myself, at that point it kind of turned into more of an obsession than I think my dad's ever had. He likes films, but I don't think to the same degree as I've sort of picked that up and run with it. But that's certainly how it started. And then I think the VHS rental era kind of kept me going right the way through until DVD. So until mid 90s, towards the end of the 90s, really, when DVDs started becoming a little bit more affordable. And
Yeah.
at that point, probably the first time that I started really building up a big collection. I had some VHS stuff, but my first sort of actual big collection back in the day was probably all on DVD.
Oh, that's great. So, what were some of those? What were some examples of the films that really were meaningful to you, maybe during this time? For example,
Uh,
with your father, for example.
I mean, I think anything science fiction. He was probably more of a war film buff than me. I was always more drawn to sort of the sci-fi side of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I think we didn't have a huge amount of kind of like kung fu or martial arts movies at that sort of point. So I think ninjas got in there very early. I think probably because of You Only Live Twice. I'm sure that's my first ever introduction to the concept of the idea of what a ninja might be, and that was spectacularly exciting for me when I was about 4 or 5. I
Yeah.
became completely and totally obsessed, and so I think that probably that sort of era of movie. There was loads and loads of kind of Crawl and The Princess Bride, and
Yeah.
anything that had a sort of slight kind of fantasy or supernatural element to it. Allowed Alien and Aliens. I saw far too young, and I absolutely fell in love with those. The Shining, I saw again far too young, and absolutely traumatized me in a way it probably still does. I think it's still probably the scariest film that I've psychologically the scariest film that I've still seen is The Shining. It's still possibly because it's harking back to the way that I was when I first saw it when I was very young, but it's still very much a memorable experience back then. So finding Kubrick, and who else did I find back at that point? Bits and pieces of comedy, though comedy I was never a huge fan of. I can sort of take it or leave it. It was always more kind of action and thrillers. I think action thrillers and sci-fi were probably the ones that got me the most at that sort of age. At Star Wars to a certain extent because they were new at that point, still fairly. I remember when Return of the Jedi came out. I think that was the first point or first time that I was able to see Star Wars on the big screen because they would do that thing where when they brought a new one out, they would show the
Mm.
previous movies at the same time. So I think I saw a triple bill. I think when Return of the Jedi came out, so I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan as well as a kid, as I'm sure most kids at that point were. Star Wars was pretty huge, so that's certainly what started the ball rolling, and then it kind of evolved. Around the time I was maybe 83, 84 when we got our first VHS recorder that we could rent videos for. And then my kind of real love of martial arts cinema and of kung fu really started at that point because it was um, finally I had access. So the rental shops had some pretty poor selection of quite low budget, not that great kung fu movies in the beginning, but then pretty quickly evolved into finding slightly higher quality stuff and slightly better movies. And then yeah, like I say, at that point dived into it with both feet. So I think we were probably me and my friends renting videos every single night. We'd go up with £5, get 5 movies, and that would be your night. We would just literally watch films until there was no hours left in the day,
Yeah.
and then the whole thing would start again the next day. So we're probably consuming maybe 15, 20 movies a week at that point.
Yeah.
It was just kind of constant. Really.
And also, you had mentioned too that again through your father's
Mm,
influence as well. You'd mentioned Bruce Lee. So before you move on, I have to ask. So, what were some of
mm.
those Bruce Lee moments, or what were some of
For
those
years it was
films?
only
Yeah.
for years it was only Enter the Dragon. It took a long time for us to
Okay.
start getting the other movies shown. So I think I can remember them showing Fist of Fury
Yeah.
late at night on TV, and it was the first time I think I saw that. But Enter the Dragon was certainly the one that I gravitated to the most strongly, the most quickly. And I think it's still probably, if catch me on the right day, I'll fluctuate between Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon being my sort of favorite Bruce Lee movie. I know an awful lot of people don't consider Enter the Dragon as being his finest work, but I think it's the one that I saw first, so it still kind of resonates with me in a way that the other ones don't as much. But I think Fist of Fury is still way, way up there. I maybe slightly prefer the remake. I slightly prefer the Jet Li version, Fist of Legend, just maybe a tiny,
Wow.
tiny bit more.
Interesting.
I think the tone of it's a bit better. I think there's some weird comedy beats in Fist of
Yeah.
Fury that are
Yeah.
unusual. And as
Interesting.
much as I really like I like fancy dress sort of disguise Bruce. It's pretty cool seeing him in his various little strange disguises in that movie. But I don't know. I think maybe the tone of Fist of Legend's a bit better. So I think probably Enter the Dragon's still my favorite. But I think he was just so incredibly charismatic. Maybe more charismatic as a man than he possibly was as an actor or martial artist. He's kind of one of these people that seems weirdly larger than life in a way, where um, kind of bigger than a normal movie star. And I'm sure some of that's because he died too young, you know. So I think anytime that someone's stolen away before they get a chance to grow old, they kind of become this sort of Jesus syndrome a little bit. They become kind of larger than life, almost like a little demigod. But so as much as I do love Bruce Lee a lot, but he's certainly not my favorite martial arts actor or my favorite performer in that way. But I do love his stuff. I think
Yeah.
the first time we communicated, I'm sure was I think you noticed after I did a it was probably just after I got the Criterion Bruce Lee box set. I think that was
Yeah.
our first time when our paths crossed,
Yeah.
which is an
That's
incredible box set. Still, I think the best way to get those movies currently.
yeah.
It's an incredible set.
Currently,
Yeah.
I think yes, for me too. I think the first one I saw was it was the version that I saw was called Return of the Dragon,
Hmm.
which is now I think known as Way of the Dragon, right? But
Hmm.
so, and it was the slightly truncated version, without the whole
Hmm.
thing with the model and the whole thing with going to the restaurant early on at the starts. It was just
Hmm.
suddenly he's there at the airport and then he meets Normau, and so it's
Hmm.
often running. So I remember so fascinated by that wonderful those great zoom ins, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. Oh, so great. I was so cool. And then just so fascinated by I don't know about you. I know you've seen the film many a time, but
Mm.
I just, I don't know what it is. It's just the Chuck Norris uh, body hair
Yeah.
and just the bit like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
just that it just blew my mind as a kid. Like, what's going on? This is amazing. So, but those are just, of course. Then the fight sequences were just like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, and just my life changed too, with
He was
regard
something
to,
else. He really was. But I think,
uh,
in a way, he almost. I think it makes for less. It maybe makes for sort of less bombastic action sequences in some ways because he was so much of his mentality was about finishing a fight as quickly as possible. So
yeah,
I think he was maybe more of a sort of um, actual true martial artist more than he was an actor, but such an incredible presence really.
I
And
agree.
I
Yeah,
think one of
so
these people
incredible.
that's as entertaining watching when he's not doing action or not doing martial arts, which is really rare for martial arts actors. It's hard to find someone who has the chops to be able to handle the
Yeah.
physicality, but then also actually can kind of capture your imagination as an actor. And sadly, there's not that many. There's certainly no one that's kind of quite up to the heights that he managed to reach. I mean, he was something else.
So we
Incredible.
were talking, yes, about just memories about Way of the Dragon, right?
Mm, yeah,
And
and I think I was just going to say I think I got married in Hong Kong in 2019. At that point, that the Bruce Lee exhibition was still running in Hong Kong. There's a wonderful Bruce Lee exhibit on there, which I think is ending up being sort of semi-permanent. So I think if anyone's visiting Hong Kong, go and check it out. It's the most incredible display of an awful lot of his own um, outfits from films and his script notes and different props and an awful lot of sort of personal artifacts and stuff, and really, really good. A lot of his letters. He's a quite an intense dude, I think, but very, very talented, but very intense.
Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. Like, where was he hiding that second pair of the nunchuck? Where was it? Right when he's right, it was like he's right. Suddenly, all the people come out, and there's a first group, the first
Hmm.
flank, and then the second flank of the gangsters come out in the alleyway, and then he pulls out the second pair. It's like where were
Yeah.
those all this time? Like wow, it's amazing. It was just he's got just so many tricks up the sleeve, but it's part of the illusion as well as the actuality of
Hmm.
of how to. It's about the physicality, and also it's about the psychological mind game, which is all part of the
Hmm.
battle. Oh, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Its strategy is
And
all embedded in there from the very get-go. Amazing.
that was
Yeah,
a forbidden fruit for me for years as well, Daisuke. We never saw any of the nunchuck sections.
I
And
know.
for watching them
Yes.
on TV, all clipped out. I'm sure. I think you had somebody on. Somebody who spoke about this recently. I think it was maybe our mutual friend John from Mondo Celovec movies. I think John would have lamented the fact that the BBFC would have very heavy-handedly cut out anything with nunchucks. I think because so many of us were hurting ourselves very badly by buying a broom handle and chopping it in half and getting a bit of chain and making our own nunchucks and concussing ourselves as young children. So all that stuff was deemed not fit for our young eyes. So that was all cut out, as was the word ninja at the same time. I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were in the UK at that point. I think you maybe did. Did I hear you speak about
Teenage
the
Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes. Hero
yes, yeah,
Turtles. Yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
And
That was the one.
Michelangelo's weapon was all of those scenes with the nunchuck was totally cut
Totally
out.
removed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so you get these weird edits and these weird like
yes.
superimpositions over the cartoon, which is very strange. And I never understood what it was until yes, that point, which was all those bits were edited out. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
crazy,
yeah.
absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so but actually that whole thing too, I don't want to go into too many detail for those who have yet to
Mm,
see Way of the Dragon, but that whole thing too about maybe the possibility of someone who is not well skilled with the weapon might injure oneself. And that's actually built into the fight scene as well. And
mhm.
so this is kind of this is part of the kind of lore or part of the package when it comes to the handling of this weapon. So it's already it's been there since I think it's in incarnation. But anyway, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So
Yeah, great, great movie.
oh, fantastic. Absolutely. Oh gosh, I want to go see it after this conversation. So, all right. So, but so then with that, of course, then earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned about how you and your friends would be renting these videos, which are now slowly but surely becoming more and more available. And you'd
Mhm.
say, what is it, 5 films for £5, and then you'd
Yeah,
watch them basically almost nonstop for the week. So, what were some of these other titles that you recall
I think
during this phase?
around about that sort of time, we're almost getting to the beginning of there was a small little VHS label over here called Made in Hong Kong that I'm sure quite a lot of people will remember. I'm not too sure if maybe you saw it when you were across here because it would have been kind of at its heyday mostly through the 90s. So when I was probably going into my kind of mid-teens at this sort of point was when they were starting to really bring out quite a lot of releases. But my first exposure to Jackie Chan came through from them. So they'd released Drunken Master and Snake and the Eagle's Shadow. My first introduction to Shaw Brothers came from them. They put out Five Venoms and Mad Monkey Kung Fu and Dirty Hole and Blood Brothers, a few other Shaw Brothers titles, My Young Auntie, and then some kind of more contemporary sort of heroic bloodshed type movies. So John Woo's The Killer, I saw for the first time through that label. God of Gamblers, kind of the Wong Jing, Chow Yun Fat, gambling. Is that a sort of subset of Hong Kong movie, the kind of the gambling genre of movie, or the acrobatic gambler genre of movie, like God of Gambler. I think we're seeing all those coming out this year as well, which would be nice to revisit. But I think they were there. Some of them more fantasy stuff. So Zoo Warriors of the Magic Mountain, Savior of the Soul, Duel to the Death, these sort of things. And the kind of more later 80s, slightly more wire work kind of based films. And around the same time, I think we also got the beginning of Tartan Video, and Tartan was another distributor who was absolutely instrumental in helping me expand my horizons beyond just American movies. Because really, all we largely had in terms of for new movies coming out of the cinemas here at that point was all just American movies. There was no real kind of British films, and I think the film festival hadn't started doing that much Asian stuff at that point in time. So yeah, VHS and then later DVD was the only way to kind of sort of experience these. But Tartan were incredible for starting to bring in the sort of first new wave of South Korean cinema. Kind of so once we get towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s, and the beginnings of South Korea starting to kind of really find their feet with film production. So we kind of started seeing things like Shuri and those sort of movies kind of coming out of Korea, and that was maybe my first exposure into South Korean cinema too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all very much sort of tied up around the same sort of time. So I was kind of experiencing, and admittedly not just Asian cinema, I was sort of seeing bits of French and German, and because Tartan would do films from almost every country, and then found Criterion around about the same sort of time too, at the beginning of DVD days. I never really did Laserdisc, but stumbled onto Criterion around the beginning of when I first started getting to DVD. So yeah, but certainly that Made in Hong Kong VHS label was, it's hard for me to um, properly kind of overstate just how big an impact they had. That was pretty huge for me. So a lot of the films that I still hold most kind of dear were in that initial catalogue of titles that they put out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Incredible.
So, for example, you mentioned the Korean film, like a Shuri, right, which is huge deal,
Yeah.
right? And so, what I was able to see that through, it was, I think, a South Korean, if I remember correctly, that was a South Korean DVD, which I think many of them at the time had English subtitle options.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but most of them. So but for you, it was through the Tartan label.
Yeah, Tartan. I think initially they did a couple on VHS, but then Tartan moved quite quickly onto DVD. And so I think the bulk of the Korean releases that I saw were probably all DVD by that point. But I think,
so cool.
yeah, because I mean, Tartan was a pretty incredible label, really. It's a shame that they didn't manage to transition to Blu-ray more effectively. I think someone bought them out, and I think the new management just, it's Palisades Tartan now, and they're still going.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still putting out some stuff, but they're nowhere near the way that they were back in their sort of heyday, because they would do like linear notes. It almost felt like a VHS version of Criterion's Laserdiscs, where it was someone trying to do something a little bit more educational based. So they would kind of give you an awful lot of information about that movie and other works that those filmmakers had been involved with inside the box. So you'd almost kind of get if it was a quest, you would get your next clue inside that tape. You know, that you'd open that tape and it would send you off down another rabbit hole of, okay, this director's made this, and that would be your way to kind of find out more things. So I think Tartan was pretty great in the early stages for kind of expanding the stuff that I became aware that I should try and track down, because it wasn't like we could jump on Wikipedia at that point and do a search for 10 best South Korean movies. You just kind of had to sort of find your way through.
Yeah.
And kind of watching what's happened to their cinema industry over the past 20 years has been incredible.
Yeah. And I remember too, this was around the time where the type of, say, coverage and focus on South Korean cinema during this time, it was really quite phenomenal. It was like what was it? I forget the English title. Please forgive me if the English title escaped. Nowhere to Hide.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, with the great use of the Bee Gees, right? And it's kind of like Heat, right? And then also the Christmas in August. Did I get that right? Yeah, Paroi Christmas, right? And then
Natural City.
Yes, and then there were other things like Tell Me Something, or I was I've become forever smitten with Shimunha, and so I was there during that period as well. Yeah.
And My Sassy Girl.
Oh, of course, and Il Mare, right?
Yeah.
Right. That I love that one. I got the soundtrack of
Mm.
the CD soundtrack of Ilmaris. So that was really quite exciting for me. But yes, My Sassy Girl was a big deal, really, really big deal. So you're
It's
absolutely, so
huge.
this is an
Yeah.
exciting period. And also it was too exciting because that was also an opportunity. Again, I know you've spoken it in the context of Tartan
Mm.
and the like, but it was also an opportunity to start, because I had not, say, gotten DVDs from the South Korean market directly before that, but then
Mm.
I'd be able to order through, say, specialty sites online, Asian cinema sites online, sometimes directly.
Mhm.
So that would be also the start of getting this great, great stuff, these
Mhm.
packed DVDs from Korea. And of course, now we know too that the South Korean physical media market is it's very, very high quality,
Yeah,
and
it's
quite
crazy.
arguably
It's really, really
it's
good.
the best stuff in the world. So
So
it's
I don't think we've never really had a chat about Plain Archive before, but Plain Archive
yeah.
are so kind of in some ways the Korean Criterion. They seem to have a. I almost wonder if they've modelled what they're doing slightly on the kind of the Criterion model. But Plain Archive are an incredible label, quite expensive,
Yes.
pound for pound,
Yeah.
but the quality of the stuff that they actually put out really good, and the extras generally quite good. They're not so English friendly, sadly, but
How
it's.
do you feel? How do you feel about this type of, how should I put it? There's a type of trend with
Mm.
Korean releases, for example, about how you have various versions,
Hmm.
right? And this is true not just of, say, films, but it's also true of like maybe music and CD or various. It's either albums or different types of nomenclature given to what the specific release is, but they'll have like A, B, C, D, and various. How do you feel about that in terms of physical media collecting?
I like it. I try not to get suckered into it for
Yeah,
every title, but
yeah,
because it's very tempting to kind of get
yeah.
things can very rapidly get quite expensive, and I think I
Yes,
feel the same sort of way about the one-click box sets, which
yeah,
isn't a specifically Korean thing. You kind of see that from quite a few of the boutique labels where they'll make three versions and they'll put all three versions in one big box, and then that'll be expensive. But so yeah, I try not to go down that buying multiple copies of the same thing just for the slightly different cover. But I'd be lying if I said I haven't once or twice. There's a couple of movies that I'm sure you have too. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I like it in theory. I think sometimes it would be nice if there was a bit more of the deluxe element being some on disc stuff too. But I know that's very difficult to do, particularly with different languages. But there's a label called Bud Blue. Have you had any
yeah,
contact with it? With Bud Blues, I think they're only up to two titles so far. They're quite
yeah.
a new label, but their release of the incredible release of A Bittersweet Life, the Kim Ji Woon movie, which is such a great. It's another South Korean movie, but such an
That's right.
incredible film.
Yeah.
But all of the extra features, although it's a Korean release, they went out of their way to make every single special feature that's on the set English friendly. So there's a audio commentary in Korean, but they give you English subtitles for the commentary, and the book's half in Korean, half in English. It's a very international friendly release.
Oh,
Don't think they were able to do the same with their second. They did a romantic comedy as their second title. I think they did My Dear Desperado, which is also a
okay.
wonderful movie, but not quite as English friendly in terms of the extras. But the film itself still has English subs and things, and a wonderful label, really very cool label, very nice people too.
Oh,
So I
wonderful.
think I like seeing what they're doing. I've probably import more stuff from Korea than I do from China and Japan at the moment. I still get quite a few bits and pieces from Japan, but it's China's difficult for us to get stuff out from regularly. We normally can only do that once or twice a year. But so it was a very long, rambling answer to a very simple question. I am a fan of the very deluxe versions, but restraint is a hard thing to try and stick by. We only have so much space and only have so much budget. And do you buy
Yeah.
that one super fancy version or three or four other regular versions?
Yeah. I know. So I think I too, it depends on the title, or it depends on
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I have a feeling of, say, nostalgia or sentimentality, or maybe, as you mentioned earlier, maybe it's just the idea of you're, because of, you've made a choice oh, you want to, in terms of what you want to quote unquote collect, you want to
Mm,
focus on just one thing for, say, budgetary reasons or maybe shelf space reasons, etc. So for me, it became Criterion. And so I like the idea of trying to get different cover versions where possible in the Criterion area.
mhm.
But then outside of that, again, I wish I had more space and more money to get as much as possible. But
But
I think for
you're
me, it was what was it? The it's not East Asian cinema, but it's the uh, Argento works from Arrow,
mhm,
the
mm,
4K releases, which I love. They have various releases though, so I opted for one of them, which is the kind of the original artwork version or whatever.
mhm.
So for each of the but they have various releases of the same 4K, you know, bricks. So I don't know,
Yeah.
like I want to have all those bricks, but I can only have, if I had to pick one, I'll go for those ones. So yeah, yeah, but I know the feeling. I know the feeling indeed. Yeah.
But while we're on the subject of Criterion and things that maybe should be in the collection that aren't, do you know about if I'd heard a rumor a wee while ago that Criterion had actually picked up the rights to all of Juzo Itami's movies. They put out two so far. They obviously put out Tampopo,
Yes.
and they put out The Funeral last year, which was great to see The Funeral coming out. But easily one of my favorite Japanese filmmakers, and really hard to get some of his earlier and some of his other films. I mean, The Funeral is very early, but some of his other comedies are very, very difficult to try and track down over here. And I know that there's been a few kind of complete collection box sets, not by Criterion in Japan, that I
Yes.
don't think have English subtitles, sadly. So
Yes.
I've managed to track down a few. But had you heard, or um, even if you haven't heard anything that's gossipy, but do you think that it would be good to see more of his movies coming into the collection?
So I don't know of those rumors. I'm the last person. I'm the worst person when it comes to Criterion rumors. So
I'm
I don't know
remembering
that.
that
Yeah.
it's maybe me that sometimes tells you these rumors.
Exactly.
Getting,
Yeah, I get news from people, from you and from others. Exactly. So I'm very grateful for that. So I do know, I think, which is, again, at the time of this video, I don't have the Criterion channel, which is the
mm,
streaming service, right, of Criterion.
yeah.
I don't have that, so I can't say with say direct knowledge. But I think a number of his works have been or currently are, again, if I'm
Yeah.
mistaken, please
Yeah,
correct
that's
me,
what I'd heard as
are
well. Yeah.
available online for streaming. Now that doesn't always translate to then Criterion has the rights to release a physical media equivalent. It's all
Yeah.
a creature of contract and what is being licensed out in terms of the license grant and the rights that are permitted under the relevant contract between a licensor and licensee. But
Yeah.
um, but in terms of the Japanese releases, I know what you're talking. I have a few of them on my shelf off the camera here, and so it would be so great to see more Itami works made
Yeah.
available, such as I mean,
Um,
you
Mimbo
mentioned the
especially.
Criterion releases. So
Mm.
what do you think?
I'm just really hoping at some point we get Mimbo. I know that it's a potentially contentious film,
Yeah,
given
yeah,
the
yeah,
potential fallout from it, and that the fallout
yes,
from it might well have contributed to him tragically losing his life. Really, if the rumors are to be believed. But I think Mimbo is such an incredible movie, and
yes.
I think it's Tampopo is maybe my favorite of his movies, but Mimbo I keep coming back to. Maybe kind of watch it once or twice a year, and just absolutely adore that film. She's so incredible
Yes.
in
Well,
that part.
it wouldn't be the first time that Criterion would maybe dip its toe in the water in terms of a quote unquote, like, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but maybe somewhat potentially sensitive release, maybe.
Yeah.
I think something along the lines of, like, I know it's a little bit of an interesting hybrid, and if one tries to
Mm.
classify the work, but I'm referring also to a film like Mishima, A Life in
Hmm.
Four Chapters. I mean, seems
Yeah.
a little bit of a kind of somewhat sensitive film. I mean, it's one that in terms of its release history in Japan versus the release history outside of Japan. I mean, that's a whole interesting topic in and of itself. And also film like maybe Oshima works, like in the realm of the senses as well. And again,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a little bit maybe it's calmed down, I would say, a little bit over the years, but maybe there was a period there where it was quite an interesting contrast between releases in Japan versus releases outside of Japan for that film as
well,
well, including the Criterion
that
release. Yeah.
that's a tricky one for them.
Yes.
I can understand why. I think because it sort of crosses the line between being a few different things potentially. I think kind of
Yes. Yes.
Criterion's perspective on it's probably the healthiest one. I think the easy way to be just to slap a kind of an R rating on it, and it would kind of essentially be locked up from that sort of point of view. But interesting, yeah. No, I think that's probably a pretty close analogy. There's maybe a few people wondering what on earth we're talking about at this point, but
That's okay.
the wonderful director of Tampopo and of the funeral, is it Juzo Itami or Tamo Juzo?
Juzo Itami, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had mostly comedy films for the most part. Comedy was one of the things that he seemed to kind of be drawn to most often, and regularly would work with his wife, who would be his main actress and his main collaborator in most of the films that they made, and made a wonderful movie called Minbo, The Gentle Art of Japanese Extortion.
Yes. Very good.
I'm getting
Well
his
done.
full title right.
Yes.
Which kind of poked a lot of fun at organized crime and at the Yakuza as maybe being quite petty and quite oddly childlike in terms of having tantrums, and didn't paint them in the best light particularly. And I think the story is that he fell foul of them and was quite badly beaten as a result for what he did with that film, but then doubled down and made a second film, I think, that
Yeah.
also attacked them. And people can Google. I don't want to bring the tone down because it's quite a sad end to that story. But he was such an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah. And in fact, this is touched upon a little bit in the supplements, or at
Mm.
least a certain perspective on it is touched upon in the supplements of The Funeral.
Yeah,
The
yeah, it's that
kind
wonderful
of,
interview with his
yeah,
wife.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes, it's as one of my favorite supplements. It's really lovely. And just to hear the level of respect and admiration that she speaks about when she talks about this very important figure in her life professionally and of course personally. So really, yeah, and those details are touched upon a little bit, in fact. So because it does
the
focus on
supplements on
his
that.
life. Yeah,
There's also a really great interview with his son too, and I had no
yeah,
idea his son plays his
yeah,
son in the film.
yeah, yeah.
And so often doing his own thing. When you kind of once you realize
Yeah.
that fact that he's not really acting, he's just kind of there. Yeah,
There's a
wonderful.
little bit, right? For example, there's a little bit with a nail and a little piece of stone, right? Which they speak about too in terms of a bit of shooting serendipity. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really quite lovely. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you picked up on that detail. Well done, well done. Oh, well done indeed. We
Oh,
say in
I love
Japanese,
his stuff.
sasuga dragon-san, which means, oh, that's, yeah, well done, but it would be, um, uh, it's not surprising because your level is so high. It's that kind of a compliment. So, sasuga desu ne, we say in Japan. A little bit about your background and growing up, and then a little bit about certain labels, certain films. Not everything, because unfortunately we don't have time to speak about everything, which is again another plug for your channel for anyone who hasn't seen or subscribed yet to The Fanatical Dragon, the YouTube channel, The Fanatical Dragon. All the details will be in the description box. Go right now, subscribe, hit notification, comment on all the videos, a like button, all this stuff helps. Let's help our dear friend. And because the wealth and library of discussions on the channel is immense and wonderful. And so I want to turn our attention a little bit in our remaining time to the
Mm,
channel and some of the
mm,
work that you do. I suppose just to pick up on one thing before we get into that in earnest, which is earlier in the conversation you had said about how when you were coming up with the channel and you were saying, oh, you were talking about actually a lot of things, but then kind of naturally turned towards focusing on East Asian cinema. Asian cinema.
Yeah.
You do speak about other things as well. I know, like Blade Runner
Hmm.
release, right? But but it primarily or the majority will be this type of focus. And you said it was kind of, I don't know, if it just happened that way, I suppose. But was it really like that, or was there? Do you think? I mean, I get a sense from the conversation that it was always something that was very much part of your growing up. And so, uh, maybe could you just let us know a little bit about that as sort of an intro into a more deep dive into your channel? Like, what was the
Hmm.
philosophy
Sure.
into what turned it into what it is now?
I think probably a little bit of a mix of things that I was influenced by, which was other channels that I enjoy. And I think I found your channel quite early on when I was kind of just getting into these sort of things as a spectator rather than as a somebody who's making stuff myself. And so yourself and Huss, who I know that you know as well over at A Touch of Film, and I'm very lucky that Huss has also become a very good friend over the course of time that I've been doing the channel. So I think that there was people who were doing things that I responded to, and there was never a sense of oh I think I can do that so much better, or it was never that sort of mentality. But it was more just it seemed like an exciting, interesting, and kind of very rewarding um, community to be a part of in terms of it seemed to be this sort of little subset of YouTube that was overwhelmingly positive, where I kind of find that it does seem to be something that people are connected by stuff that they're enthusiastic about. So I find it to be um, an overwhelmingly positive thing to be attached to. It is a lot of work, as I'm sure you know yourself too. Like making videos and running the channel can take quite a lot of time. So I never wanted it to be something that I wasn't doing purely for the love of doing it. Really, this is a very vague, rambly answer in a way for what was a very succinct question. But I think I never I never really sort of taken a step back from myself in what I'm doing with the channel that much. I just, in terms of my most of my motivation is just whatever it is that I feel that I would like to talk about at that particular moment, or that release that's just come through that I'm particularly excited about. Or there's a couple of purely unboxing channels that I think are incredibly well produced. There's a wonderful channel called The Relaxing End. I don't know if you're familiar with. That's phenomenally successful. I think he's up to millions of subscribers now, and he never speaks. I think he's somewhere in Scandinavia. I'm sure he's in Norway or Sweden, or but all of his videos are literally just unboxings, but completely silent and very ASMR. So everything's very close mic'd up. So if he's cutting through a piece of tape, you hear it as if it's your whole world is that piece of tape being cut. And I quite like what he does, but didn't want to be a purely silent channel. So I think there's been kind of an amalgamation of different influences, and then I've just sort of tried to do things my own kind of way, and it's sort of evolved naturally as I get, I guess, a little bit better at doing stuff. That's maybe arguable. Some people would watch my videos and say, "No, you're clearly not getting any better the more of these videos that you make." But I think as time goes on, you find a way that seems to work for you in terms of how you're producing things, and so that when I say it's kind of evolved quite naturally, it's more that side of things that I'm sort of speaking about in terms of I'm try to do things quite quickly, and tried not to just tried to kind of keep it as honest and as natural as I possibly can. So I'm trying not to do too many gimmicks, and I don't I have a very simple setup, similar to your own, in terms of everything's made with just a mobile phone, and I have a quite stark way of shooting things, where most things are just shot against plain white. And so there's a, for better or worse, there's a kind of style to how I'm doing things that people will either like or they will maybe not enjoy at all. And then more recently, the type of thing that we're doing just now is something that I didn't think I was going to do when I started the channel, and didn't necessarily think I would be on or in front of camera at any point. But there's certain things that are just completely impractical to do in the other style of how I do my videos. We couldn't have a conversation the way that we're doing just now against a completely white white backdrop with occasionally putting a box in front of it. It'd be very boring for everyone listening. So I know certain things work much better of having an actual human face that people can see. So I'm dipping my toe more and more into these sorts of things. I'm doing kind of more chats with other channels, and maybe I'll in time might kind of get to do the live stream type things, which you do so well already. So I might go down that road at some stage, but mostly I've just been enjoying having a space where I can talk about the things that I'm enthusiastic about. I think it's if anybody's like remotely on the fence about wanting to start a channel, absolutely start a channel. I think I would always say to anybody who is even remotely curious, absolutely try it, because it doesn't take much. I mean, a lot of people will have a mobile phone that has a camera on it, and that's really all you need. I have many friends who don't even use a microphone, and they'll just literally just speak straight into the phone, and it's fine. Your point will still come across. So I think it's a good, wonderful thing that that there is a platform that you can still just essentially access and upload stuff to yourself without it costing us money. And the only real cost is time, and that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, well said. I love that. That's great. Absolutely great. And it's right. Doing the channel is it has a lot of, I think, benefits and kind of benefits and really lots of advantageous things. It does have its, of course, it's not all. There are some things that one has to get used to, of course, and this kind of making yourself available to people who can kind of watch and comment at will, or you have to see the ups and the downs, and take those things take those things in sort of due course as we all do. But those are, I think, very minor things. I
Yeah.
get,
Oh yeah.
we all get those, but those I think I do get people asking me, sometimes, oh, what should I do if I got a thumbs down on a video? What should I do? And I always think it's just that's the way it is. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. And
It's great.
people, yeah, people are not going to like it. That's fine. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. And it's
There's
not like
I'm
they're
not
bad, or it's not a troll. It's just that's the way
no
things
no
are.
not at
So
all.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but there's one line in those Harry Potter books that I always remember in moments like this. Anytime I'm speaking about the thumbs down aspect of YouTube, and I think that the professor says to Harry at one point, if you're holding out for 100% universal acclaim, you're going to be waiting for the rest of your life. You're never going to get to a point where you can please absolutely everybody.
yeah.
And I think it's no. I have one wonderful subscriber who, the second that I upload every video, thumbs down it straight away. Doesn't even watch it. So say the video is 10 minutes long. If I upload it, once it's been up online for maybe 30 seconds, he will very kindly give me a thumbs down on every single thing that I do. So it's fine. It's just, I think he or she, I don't know, it's definitely a he, is using their power to thumbs up or thumbs down. You have that.
No,
That's the way it works.
that's fine. And
But
also,
it's
yeah, I also think too, like I think back on people or things I've met, or encountered with people that I've met throughout my life. I haven't liked everyone I've met in my my lifetime, so it's kind of the similar thing,
yeah.
How can I expect the same thing if I in my life? I mean, I don't say to people's faces, that sort of, but it's not. But it's that feeling. It's like it's just natural to like things and not like things. So it's.
Yeah.
And I feel that way too about many things. Like some pizza I really despise, and so I'll thumbs down a pizza. I won't do it on YouTube, but I'll kind of in my mind thumbs down a certain pizza flavor or pizza topping. I feel bad for people who really like that pizza topping, but what can I say? So no offense against people who like that pizza topping, but yeah,
What's
sorry.
your
Yeah.
least favorite pizza topping? I'm curious to
Oh,
know. I have to know.
I mean, I kind of like I just simple is easier for me. So I just like a simple, like I'm even pepperoni is getting a bit much for me. I like
Okay.
pepperoni pizza, but if it's getting more things, I mean, I like pineapple, I like
Mm-hmm.
peppers, but if I'm gonna have it all on the pizza, it's getting a bit much. So I know kind
It's
of brain overload. So
okay.
but it's the same thing too. I like milk and I like orange
Mm-hmm.
juice, but I won't have them together.
No, it's a very
Yeah.
quick recipe to be very, very sick.
Yes, yes.
I think
So
if
it's the
you eat
same
those
thing,
two things.
with my pizza. So, but again, I'm always open for anything. So I always give it a try. Not yeah. Anyway, what we were talking. Oh yeah, so the channel, the Fanatical
Mm.
Dragon channel, which would be another again another plug for people who have not yet subscribed to it. Please do so. So it what are some of the video discussions in particular that you're, let's say, most proud of, or maybe you want to give
I
a kind
think
of spotlight to right now? If people were to try to
I
go to
mean
your channel right now, what would you maybe recommend that they first try out, or things that you're really particularly pleased with?
we haven't spoken too much about Shaw Brothers when we've been speaking today, but Shaw's is actually one of my huge loves. I would say I'd probably as committed as you are to the Criterion Collection is how committed I am to Shaw Brothers or to their attempts to try and kind of bring more of their back catalogue to life. So I was very lucky because of writing for Eastern Heroes. I can get access to review copies for not that many labels, but some of them, and they certainly don't send me everything. I kind of have to plead my case on a release by release basis. But I was very lucky last year. They sent me the Shawscope Volume One box set, so I think I had that 3 4 months before it came out, and was able to work through and do very much inspired by what I'd seen you do with some of the bigger box sets. So I don't do quite as deep dives as your deep dives, but when you've kind of broken down a box set, you go into a level of detail that I in some ways wish that I could, but I'm not quite. I think partly because of the way that I put the videos together, the format that I use means a 40-minute video becomes a 2 week long editing exercise. So I try and keep them quite short, but was very lucky to be able to go all the way through volume one and do each disc individually. And I've just done the same thing for volume two. So I think I'm almost finished my individual disc breakdowns. So if a disc has 2 movies on it, that video would cover both those movies. And I've been doing that for each of the films in the volume two set. And I do similar things for a few different labels. So I'm quite recently connected with the wonderful Chameleon films from Australia. I don't know if you've picked up any of their releases so far. They're pretty new.
I don't have any,
They,
no.
that I would highly recommend if you get a chance to track them down, because I think they're still doing a bundle where their first 3 releases are available. If you get them together, you get them at a discounted price. And they've just put out 2 Johnny To films.
Mm,
So they did Breaking News and Exiled,
mm.
and then a wonderful Japanese film called Summertime Machine Blues,
Mm.
which I don't know if you've seen, and that was had already come out in the UK from Third Window, but they've released that into Australia. But was able to connect with them, so they've also very kindly kind of sent stuff over for me to cover. So I'm starting to slowly make more connections with a few of the labels. 88 Films occasionally have helped out in the past with gifting prizes for giveaways and things. So I've kind of got limited connections with a few of the labels, and I'm trying to kind of build on that. The more that I write for the magazine, so try and have it being something that I can kind of try and give people information a little bit ahead of time, because I think a lot of the time it feels like we're somehow playing catch up, where we're only able to review something after it's released, and we have to
Yeah.
wait for it to ship. And neither of us are in the States, so it's an American release. We have to wait for it to come over. By the time we get it, it's been out in the States for a while. It feels like we're almost chasing our own tail a little bit, or playing catch up. So I'm trying to kind of get to a point where I can be a little bit semi-connected to a few of the labels, still to remain impartial, but just to be able to have a little bit earlier access to things. But certainly for the time being, anytime that Arrow put out anything Shaw Brothers related, or anytime that Spectrum Films in France put out anything Shaw Brothers related, then
Yeah, yeah.
I'll always be doing reviews of those. Because that's probably my first love of all the films that we've been talking about. Shaw Brothers that are, for whatever reason, the films that still capture my imagination and my enthusiasm almost more than any other genre. I absolutely adore their films. They make
Yeah.
a very diverse set, and I don't love them all because
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of them. But the ones that I do love, I love very.
Yeah, I'm so glad you spoke about that. I recently finished going through the second volume set at long. It's
Mm,
amazing, and so I have volumes one and two, and so like it's just it's as you said, it's such a great variety. Like you mentioned, Five Venoms earlier, I think, so that's what
mm-hmm.
in the first set. and
Hmm.
also like Mighty Peking Man, which I think was also on 88 for a while there, but also
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the volume two set, right? Um, 36 Chamber, right? Shaolin and Return and
Mhm.
God, yeah. So so what are some of the impressions that you can share with us a little bit? I know that you have the great video discussions on your channel, but
Mhm.
just overall, what would you say?
I think there's never been a better time in some
Yeah,
ways for people who are, particularly those people who are coming to this for the first time or diving into
yeah,
this stuff for the first time. Because I think, I mean, 20 years ago, the versions that we were able to get of these films, the legitimate VHS versions were okay, but a lot of the films that were on those box sets, the first time I saw them was bootleg copies, which were so expensive. I mean, I think I can remember paying sort of 20, £30 in like 1992, 1993 for a badly VHS to VHS dodgy knockoff copy of Legendary Weapons of China and of Eight Diagram Pole Fighter. And so the first time that I saw these movies, they looked so bad. It was almost impossible to kind of see what was going on if it was a nighttime scene. And really having such wonderfully restored versions of these with quite thoughtful, well presented extras for them. It's a pretty wonderful thing. I never ever thought we would see something like those Shawscope box sets coming out, and I think it's quite wonderful that a label as large as Arrow has got involved. I did. I think I maybe had a daydream 10 years, 20 years ago of maybe one day Criterion would do like a huge Shaw Brothers box set, and I laboured under that dream for a while. But I think it's kind of almost as if in
yeah.
some ways they sort of have in a way. I think these other labels, Arrows and Eureka 88
Eureka,
Films,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
none of these labels would be around if it wasn't really for what Criterion started. But I think I think those sets is a wonderful place to start. And I know it can seem like quite a large investment, but there's still individual versions of some of these films available. You can start with a single movie, and some of them are available on a couple of the streaming platforms if you want to dip your toe in. But I think there are just there's never been a more, from a production standpoint, there's never been a more perfectly engineered filmmaking machine as that Shaw Brothers studio for a
yeah,
15 year period. I think from a moral point of view, it's probably a very different conversation, but I don't think those actors necessarily
yeah,
were being treated maybe the way that they should have been.
yeah.
But the that environment kind of gave rise to the most incredible environment for producing so much stuff so quickly and at a level or a quality level that's not really been matched by that many other countries. I mean, it's very close to the American studio system, but without any of the human rights that I think the American studio system would have given most of their people who are working in it. So I think it was probably a very tough life in the late 70s and early 80s if you were working at Shaw Brothers Studio, but they produced some incredible stuff. And those two box sets really are the sort of two big
Yeah.
main heavy hitting directors that the studio had are so well represented across those two sets. So Chang Che and Lau Kar-long.
Yeah, what would be some, oh yes, thank you. Yes, exactly. And we've had uh some discussions as well, in a similar, I mean slightly different, but also similar context as well. Um like with the Once Upon a Time in China, etc., and that's various comparisons with various releases. I know, wonderful stuff.
Mm.
But what would be some, from your perspective? What would be some of the and I have my ideas as well, but I'm very curious to hear what would be some of those titles in particular, Shaw Brothers titles that you think are the ones to go to, maybe in particular for those who might be curious and maybe going at this for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
What would be some
I mean,
examples from your perspective?
if you were going for individual releases, so if you didn't want to make
Okay, okay, yeah.
the commitment of going for one of those Shawscope box sets first, Arrow did a pretty wonderful standalone version of Eight Diagram
Uh,
Pole Fighter.
yeah.
I think it was also There is also an 88 Films version 2, but I think arguably Lau Kar-leung's maybe absolute highest benchmark cinematically, possibly. That I'd maybe put Dirty Ho in there, probably around about the same sort of level, but certainly that's still probably for people. Oh, I think I lost you, but you're back. Can you hear me
No.
again?
Yes, I can hear. Sorry about that. It's my
That's
Wi-Fi.
okay.
Yeah, that's my Wi-Fi.
Okay,
I was spotty, so I'll edit that out. Not a problem. So,
cool. That's
all right,
okay. Do you want
it
me
can.
to jump back in from? Did you get the 8 diagram profile bit?
I
Or we
did. I
jump on to the
did.
next one?
Yeah.
Great.
I kind of it just spotted out for me, but that's my fault. I'll edit it out. Not a problem. You keep going. Go for it. Go
Cool.
for it.
Okay, no worries. I think I'm biased towards Lau Kar-leung's work because he's probably my favorite director of all of cinema, not just of Shaw Brothers directors. And I absolutely adore his work. So I think I still keep coming back to Dirty Ho, which a lot of people have a huge amount of amusement over the title, but put that to one side. It's such a spectacularly wonderful movie that kind of works as much as a comedy as it does an action movie, and so sophisticated in terms of the choreography that's going on in that film. And it's on, very, very delighted that it's on the Shawscope Volume 1 box set. But it's easily amongst my sort of top 3 Shaw Brothers films of all time. So I would absolutely encourage everybody to watch Dirty Ho. And I think it's an actor that a lot of people will recognize, particularly if you're coming to it having seen Tarantino's 2 Kill Bill movies. The main actor in Dirty Ho is Gordon Liu, who's plays 2 parts in those Kill Bill films and is in 36 Chamber. So that's absolutely kind of way up there. Some lesser seen or maybe less spoken about ones that I think it would be worth setting people to try and track down. Demon of the Loot is incredibly, really, really good fun, very strange, very kid friendly. But I think it's basically a family movie. It's a film made for children by the Shaw Brothers Studio, but very, very good fun. I'd put it way up there with we spoke about Krull and Princess Blade and things in Path. And I would put Demon of the Loot up alongside those type of movies. Or Time Bandits, one of these things that can be a little bit scary in places, but not so much that it's going to give kids nightmares. But Demon of the Loot is an incredible film, and I think the whole Shaolin cycle. Chang Cheh did the Shaolin cycle movies. Lau Kar-leung kind of had his own little sort of subset of movies, and then some of the less well-known directors. So Chor Yun's work. I did Magic Blade and Death Jewel. Magic Blade's a good place to start for Chor Yun, and I won't pull in. Some of the French releases of some of the Tony Sitchou movies. And there's a French release of The Bastard Swordsman, but we'd be loath to recommend those because they're not very English friendly, so no English subtitles on those. But we just watch them in Cantonese, and my wife kind of helps me, and we try and get by with French subtitles. But both of those Bastard Swordsman movies are incredibly good. But I think 88 did a pretty good job of releasing a good spread. So even if martial arts aren't your main thing, or if you find kung fu very boring, there's still a lot of other stuff.
I see behind you the shelf that you just pulled right on the just behind you, right? The other side. Yes, right there, right? The no, the where the the other side. Keep going to your this one. Yes, that's right.
Yes,
those are the 8. Those right. Those are the 88.
Yeah, that's
yes. Thank you.
Some of the 88s. Yeah, and there's
some
somewhere in
yeah.
what was it? There, kind of like a strip of Shaws. Because I think 88 they got to 36, so there's 36 different titles from 88 films.
Mm-hmm.
I did a video. If anyone's curious about what 88 put out, I have a video that goes into every single one of the 36, and you can kind of compare. I think that's a bit more of a potential minefield than the arrow sets are very safe. So I think for the most part, there was only really one movie on Volume 1 that rubbed some people up the wrong way, which you mentioned, which was Mighty Peking Man.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
Yeah.
I think it's good fun. Maybe it would have been nice if they put Super Inframan on, which would have spoken to your Jet Jaguar cravings.
Yeah,
You've seen
interesting.
Super
Yes,
Inframan
yes,
maybe
yes,
would have
yes,
been very good fun.
yes.
But I don't mind Mighty Peking Man, but I think that second box set, there's not really a, well, Boxer's Omen's maybe
Boxer's
a slightly
Omen, right?
tougher
I was
set,
going to say, yeah. But still, it's
which
great to have
maybe a
it
lot
there.
of
But yeah, I understand. Yeah.
but it's a bit more of a Marmite where people either love it or hate it. But some of the in the that '88 collection, there's certainly a few more kind of horror entries. But I kind of still find their horror movies quite their heart's in the right place. I never feel there's too much of a mean streak to them. There's some great practical effects. They're sometimes a bit silly and a bit goofy. There's a genuinely an absolute classic Shaw Brothers horror movie called Hex. It's a
Yes.
remake
Yes.
of Diabolique, the French movie
Yes.
that I
Yes.
prefer I prefer over the original, which is a wonderful, wonderful film.
Yes.
But I think they jumped around. So they did musicals, they did dramas, they did little bits of everything. I think over 1,000 movies in a little bit less than 30 years, which is a pretty incredible track record.
Very
They
impressive
made a
indeed.
lot. Yeah. So
Oh,
I
this is
think that
great.
I've been there very briefly. We couldn't get through the door, but we did try and turn up and visit before they pulled down the sign. I think they took down the big Shaw Brothers sign last year, just in the middle of lockdown.
Oh, I
We
didn't
were
know
there
that.
before lockdown.
Oh, gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's too bad. Oh,
the
but you went
signs
before.
used to be over the gate. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
we couldn't get through the gates of the main studio, but the actors all used to live um, on campus or on studio, if you like. So there's a huge accommodation block where the actors would be given flats each, and that bit's not behind walls, so you could still walk around the actors' original accommodation block, and there's still actors living in it. There's still some of the people
Oh, that's cool.
from the Shaw Brothers heyday, because I think the deal was that they would give them housing for the rest of their life, so the ones that are still alive are still living there. And the garbage bins outside still have a little Shaw Brothers logo. Very cool.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
send you
that's.
some photos. But
Oh, I'd
my,
love
my
to see
very
those.
patient my very patient wife went on a pilgrimage. I think it was like the day after we got married. We went out to Clearwater Bay, and she accompanied me out to there. But because they've started pulling down the studio, but yeah. Anyway, I won't ramble too much about the history of Shaw Brothers films here, but there are a pretty incredible, very never to be repeated again kind of wee filmmaking empire, I guess, for the duration that they ran.
Oh, this is so wonderful. And thank you very much for sharing that. I suppose it was uh, Honeymoon and Shaw Brothers.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow, that's so lovely. That's so cool. That's the coolest thing. That's so cool. Oh my goodness. So, this is really great. I want to again, I want to once again encourage anyone who's watching who has not yet checked out the Fanatical Dragon, to check out the Fanatical Dragon, subscribe, and it has a rich history. The channel, your channel has it's a deep history in terms of, as we mentioned, what the things that are going on, and right. I wish I had some timeline. Maybe we can do this part two. We can talk about
I would love to.
the great history and Sunny Chiba. And yeah, but
Yeah,
I let me just say again, I don't want to belabor the point too much. I know is kind
mm,
of I know what I kind of know what happened. People want to know details about the channel. Of course, they can. I
mm,
think you have a video up there about kind of the details of what happened, and how it was it was taken down, but then you put it up again, and it's
yeah,
off and running like nobody's business. It's just nothing stopping you, which is wonderful. So. Let me just say though that I saw it as being, and I hope I mean this pure, from the heart. It's like like the Street Fighter, it's like that bit with a book, like that. But it's
yeah.
cool. That's so cool. It's the Street Fighter thing, but it's like that's iconic in and of itself. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
this is your
The
channel.
X-ray
Yeah.
punch.
Yes, exactly. So but that's cool. That's so cool indeed. I mean, when I thought I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that's like the X-ray punch embodied in the YouTube channel history forever. And so in many ways, that's like the cool, you know what I mean? So that's the coolest thing. So I hope that's what I wanted to say about that. Yes.
Yeah, so I think to fill in those who maybe don't know
Yes.
exactly what happened and what Daisuke is referring to, so I, in my early YouTuber naivete, I thought that it would be just trying to upload a video every day, which is very difficult to do. And on days when I didn't get a chance to make a video from scratch, I was putting up episodes of an absolutely fantastic old Sonny Chiba TV series called Kage no Gundam, or Shadow Warriors, which is where he first played the part of Hattori Hanzo. Well, different variations of Hattori Hanzo. I think he was playing his own relative as seasons went on. But I was laboring under the very stupid Bakugaijin, very stupid idea that the TV show had fallen out of copyright. And so I thought, oh, no one will mind me posting episodes of this TV show that you can't get on DVD, you can't get on Blu-ray. Well, apparently, still very much owned by Toho. And after I had uploaded, I think 36 episodes, I uploaded the entire first season. The copyright struck every single one of those 36 episodes. And normally it's 3 strikes and then your channel is killed. So my channel was summarily killed overnight by me very stupidly sharing episodes of a very wonderful Sonny Chiba TV show, which absolutely needs to get a proper Blu-ray or DVD release because it's a great show. Kind of like the A-Team with ninjas, really. That's how I always describe it to people. Or different rolling cast each week. Someone else rolls into town, ninjas have to help them. Happy, great, such a good show. Anyway, yes, so that was entirely my own fault. So no tears for the dragon for his own stupidity, and that channel very much was killed. But I think luckily I'd made some wonderful friends already in the time that the channel was up and running. So you very kindly helped me get back and running. And I think some of my other friends with other channels all very kindly spread the word and said, no, he's not gone. This is the new channel. And then that second version 2 channel with no Sonny Chiba TV episodes, I'm afraid, but much safer content has been up and running for a wee while. But to bring it or to keep it with Sonny Chiba, because I think this is going to be the year of Shinichi Chiba. It's so many releases coming from different labels, highlighting more of his films. It should be pretty wonderful to see. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. I mentioned at the beginning because I was curious about what his reputation or what his standing's like in Japan, or is it one of these sad situations where he's maybe more regarded internationally than he is domestically?
Oh no, I don't think so. I mean, Chiba
Good.
Shinichi, right,
Yeah, yeah.
is his name in Japan or in Japanese, and so he's not referred to as Sonny Chiba per se here in Japan, but Chiba Shinichi, and so
Mm-hmm.
he's highly regarded, right, highly
Good.
regarded, and a type of sort of legend status, and when he was when he was active, of course, it was made appearances on TV. Even later in his life and career, made appearances on TV and the like, and would be welcomed and still very, very known, very famous. So, um, yes, yeah. So, highly, highly regarded, yeah, in
Good.
Japan. Yeah.
Good. Because that's sadly part of the reason I ask is that's sadly not the case for. We were just talking about Shaw Brothers, but most of the Shaw Brothers actors are not really particularly well known in Hong Kong anymore. I think an awful lot of the sort of the younger generations just don't see or don't have any access to see those movies. They never screen on TV in Hong Kong or in China.
Yeah,
It's a shame.
I don't know. I'm not sure. For example, like maybe, or again, he was a very famous television personality, and he passed away somewhat recently, of course,
Yeah,
which is
he's
also
old.
very big news here in Japan. As a very famous star passes away, and it was a big news, and so he would make appearances, as I say, late in life, even on TV, and maybe as guests or these various TV shows, and so people might know him there, and they might not necessarily have known his earlier work, but they would have known his personality presence on TV, or they would have known his earlier work, and very, very famous, very, very famous indeed. So yeah, kind of has a kind of legend status.
That's good. I'm hoping that we're going to see some of the some of his kind of more eclectic titles, I think, kind of coming out
Yeah.
this year is a pretty good list.
I would say perhaps on the flip side of the coin, what you're referring
Mm,
to in terms of the various releases of his works, I don't know if there's that much attention, to be perfectly honest, in the Japanese physical media market towards his films
okay.
like there is in non-Japanese markets, let me put it that
Yeah.
way, which is I think it's great to see, really, really great to see, because maybe in some ways the Japanese physical media market, in some levels it's very strong. On other levels, I'm sure maybe you agree, it's not as strong as say other labels outside of Japan. So it has its positive and negative points, I think, but
Anime is still going strong. It's
very
strange
strong.
how
Yeah,
anime almost is always kind of offering under its own
yeah.
gravitational pull that seems to be just. I'm always amazed at the number of anime titles and books and movies that are coming out in Japan every year.
Anime, I think can't be beat.
Yeah,
It has its own, like if you go to a store or something, it has its own little floor. You have
yeah,
to, right. So it's whole
or
separate,
or
but
its own dedicated store.
or yeah, its own building,
Yeah,
yeah, or something.
yeah.
So it's very strong that way. And I would say too, maybe to a lesser extent, maybe like tokusatsu or
Mm-hmm.
kaiju stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
especially maybe the TV show stuff, which is very difficult to find outside of Japan, I think. But at the same time, maybe some other films, they might be like really good packages, but maybe light on the supplements, or they
Yeah.
might be maybe for on purpose. I don't know, maybe on purpose or not say friendly in terms of lack of English
English
or
subs.
other
Yeah,
language subtitle offerings, for
yeah.
example. So that might be an
That's
issue going forward. But again, every place has its pluses and minuses, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, very true. And I think we'll see. I know that there's, I think Eureka have confirmed Bullet Train and
Oh, is that
Samurai
true?
Reincarnation.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
great. Yes.
both coming this year.
Oh,
And
I love.
Samurai Reincarnation's on the American Shout Select set too, but Bullet Train particularly is very, very good. Not
Yeah.
not to be confused with the Brad Pitt Bullet Train, uh,
Oh,
the
I
original
love
Bullet
that
Train.
film. I love that. And I have the
Yeah.
Japanese Blu-ray, but the Blu-ray I don't think has English subtitles. So that's great news. Oh, that's so wonderful.
Mm.
Oh,
And
so
Eureka so hopefully should have a few bits and pieces of extras. And I just got done with. In fact, I think I just posted today the Arrow just brought out their Executioner set,
that's so
which I'm
cool.
sure is one that you'll be tracking down.
Yes.
And they're
Yes.
really great fun movies.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
going to be
Oh.
interesting to kind of see what else we get from them. Yeah,
Oh,
pretty
that's so
wonderful.
cool. Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful stuff. So, again, this has been so great. This has been so fun. And my dear friends, I hope you have seen as much as I have just the great enthusiasm that we've had from our dear friend, Dragon, Fanatical Dragon, TFD. It's so wonderful. So once again, please, if you haven't done so already, go to the channel right now, subscribe, and check out all these videos. We mentioned some Shaw Brothers. There are a lot of those videos, but there are a lot more we didn't. I wish we could speak about, but we didn't. So some of my personal favorites like Angela Mao or Sammo Hung, we didn't speak about those. I wish we should try to
Mm,
pick this up again next time if you're interested,
mm.
my dear friend.
I would love to. I'll be
Thank you
there
so much.
anytime you
Thank
like.
you. Oh, this has been so much. So maybe in closing, would you please
Mm.
maybe just the floor is yours. So if you want to give us some last minute maybe recommendations or your channel or anything, please the floor is yours, my dear friend.
I would just say thank you to you very much for having me with you today. Thank you to everybody for watching, and particularly if they've made it to this far of the end of the video. I'm always very grateful if people get to the end. I would love it if you jump over and take a little look at the channel and see if you enjoy what I do over there. It's fine if you don't. But take a little look and see if it's for you. If it is, then do throw me a subscribe. I would be very, very, very grateful. And hopefully we will get a chance to do this again soon because it's been great fun. And I think if our early morning, late night seems to be in relative harmony, so you're not too bleary eyed and I'm not falling asleep, so it should work at this sort of time. So yeah, hopefully we'll do this again.
Ah, that would be so great. And that would be so wonderful. Maybe we can try to figure out. I'm trying to do more joint live streams and the like, so we'll try to figure something out. So, oh, this is wonderful. So, thank you very much.
We'll do it the
Yes,
other way around. I can get you over to my place next time. I can do that.
whatever works, my dear friend. Whatever works. I'm okay anyway. So, okay. This is so wonderful. So, the Fanatical Dragon. Thank you so much, and we will talk again very soon. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you.
Oh, and happy Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is today. So
Indeed. Yes. Thank
happy
you
New
very
Year.
much. Yes. Thank you. Well done. Yes. Happy Chinese New Year
So we
to
we
everyone.
should say Gung Hoi Fa Choi.
Gong Hoi Facho. Thank you very much. Yes. So thank you, my dear friend, and we'll talk again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Happy
Daisuke.
New
See you
Year.
then.